Hey Glenn, I have a question for you about Guardians of the Galaxy,
Okay.
the movies. I remember when the first one was going to come out, and the first words out of your mouth were, "How are they going to do that?"
Yeah. I remember I was like, of all the characters they could have picked on, Guardians of the Galaxy
Yeah,
with Rocket Raccoon.
right, right. Well, how do you think they pulled off the first one?
It just blew me away. I was very entertained. I thought they did a great job. The Peter Quinn character, they set it up. It was excellent. The way they did his character, bringing in the music, the idea of his mixtape from home. That was excellent. That was excellent because it promotes his personality. It shows his attachment to his past, his memories of his mom. I mean, they got so much into that in one movie. They really, they developed all those characters. It's just, I thought they did a great job. And the Rocket Raccoon thing was just, they really pulled it off. He gave him a big personality, and that's what it needed to make it work. And it was great. I enjoyed it. I just had a good time in there.
Now, about those two things, about the music tie-in and making Rocket Raccoon really big like that. Are those things that were in the comics, or is that new stuff just made for the movie?
It kind of depends on where you pick up the narrative. You know, if you've been reading comics since back in the 60s or 70s, I mean, I read the very first Star-Lord stories that were printed in when Marvel was experimenting with full magazine size, comics. I forget what it was called. It was like Marvel Premiere or Marvel Presents, something like that. But they had an oversized magazine with black and white stuff in it. Sort of like the old horror magazines like Creepy and stuff like that. The ones that Vampirilla was in, things like that. They tried doing that, and they kept trying to find a way to do science fiction. It seemed like back then science fiction was a hard thing to do in comics, and so they did this Star-Lord character. And I remember at the time thinking, it's sort of like another version of Green Lantern. I mean, he's an Earthman who gets pulled out into space and is given these abilities. And the original Star-Lord had a gun that did different things. It was like all the elements, like water and fire and stuff like that. And he was sort of set up to be, space cop, kind of a thing. Um, but now I think, from what I've seen, they've completely changed that. I went out purposely and got some of the Guardians of the Galaxy trade paperbacks of the more recent storylines. And the Peter Quinn character was changed quite a bit. I'd have to go back and read the original stuff again, but it seems like they tuned his origin and the whole thing of his mom being impregnated by an alien and all this stuff. Well, I don't know the spoilers. If you didn't pick that up from the movie, they mentioned something towards the end about when they scanned him and they found something different about him. There was something in him that was not human,
Mm-hmm.
and that's because he's what do you call it? A hybrid, I guess
A
you'd call it.
hybrid, sure.
Yeah, he's part human, part something else. But yeah, I mean, in the comics, they really, I mean, they took this character who was kind of a drab, run-of-the-mill science fiction, space cop, and they made it into a much more interesting thing by putting this group of characters together where they're all like, it's like a dysfunctional family. It's almost like what Stan Lee did when he first created the Fantastic Four, because they're set up obviously as a family with the father and the mother, and then the two bickering sons or whatever, or Uncle Ben, whatever he would be. But they set it up. He set it up. There was definitely a family structure to it, and this thing is sort of the same thing. These characters have been thrown together. They were all loners. They never really had, a family group to cling to and all that, and now they do. So they work as a unit that way, and they did that in the stories I read, and they did some interesting stories. They took these characters who you would think are minor characters and made them very important to the big cosmic side of Marvel's universe. They come out to be the name at first. It sounds funny, Guardians of the Galaxy. These guys are going to guard the whole galaxy. But in the comics that I've read, they managed to pull stuff off. I mean, just like they did in the movie. I mean, they do wind up, preventing this huge disaster that's going to take place. So I like that. I like the idea. You know, these people, you throw them together. There's a group of misfits, and you know, they do a good job. You know, so and they wind up having feelings for each other.
Right.
You know, although they can't always communicate them very well.
Hmm. Now there's going to be a sequel. It's due in I think May the 5th of 2017.
17?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
wow.
that's what my notes say.
I was thinking 16, but 17.
But
Yeah.
I mean, it was obvious when it became a hit that they were going to make a
A
sequel,
sequel, yeah.
and part of Marvel's overall film scheme, it totally will fit into the larger scheme.
Yeah.
Where do you see the new film going, and how it's going to fit along with the other Marvel films?
Oh, there's been a lot of chatter online about will they show up in the Avengers movie or like maybe the next Iron Man movie? Will there be a little bit of a crossover there? And the early Marvel comics were known for that. I mean, Stan set up from the very beginning. You know, it was like an editorial directive to everybody at Marvel that all of our characters are going to share the same universe. You'll be able to see them. Sometimes it'll just be one of them in the background passing by or something, but we want them to all be part of the same universe, and they're doing the same thing in the movies. So they may do like a little. They may drop them in here or there between now. I mean, 2.5 years is a long time to wait for the next movie, you know. So they may do something like that, or it may just be that this is going to be the whole build up towards. I mean, everybody knows that Thanos is coming. Thanos is the big bad of the Marvel universe. He worships death, and you'd be nothing happier than to have everybody die. So, a very interesting character, and they've been showing in the last few movies. They've shown the power gems, and so these next few movies, I'm sure the power gems are they're going to show up, and at some point people are going to start trying to collect them, bring them together, because if you bring them together, they form the Infinity Gauntlet, which gives you ultimate power over everything, which is what Thanos is going for. So I think that's going to be the story arc, you know, from the next Avengers movie right through to the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, the second Guardians of the Galaxy movie. And the second Guardians of the Galaxy movie might be the climax of that story arc, you know, and then they may have the Avengers in the Guardians movie, you know, or one or two of them or whatever, you know, but that's where the big galactic cosmic story is going to take place with Thanos, you know, ready to destroy not just the galaxy but the universe. I mean, he's usually going for ultimate annihilation. Um, and I'm interested to see if they're going to introduce in the Marvel universe in the comics. They have these like elder beings who have been around almost since the beginning of the universe, and they have great power and everything, and they all seem to be OCD because they all seem to focus on one thing. Like there's one called the Gardener, and he's just about creating plant life or something, a planet that's perfect. And there's the Collector, and they've already shown the Collector, and he wound up with one of the power gems. They showed him at the end of, which movie was it? One of the past movies. They showed the Collector. It's the one that wound up where Howard the Duck was sitting there.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
right.
That was the Collector's place, and he's one of the elder guys. They're supposed to be very powerful cosmic beings, sort of like Galactus on that level. But then beyond them, also in the Marvel Universe, they've always personified abstract concepts. So there's a being that at times, like Doctor Strange, the Sorcerer Supreme, can actually talk to the universe. They have a character who is the universe, and they also have a character who is death. So there is actually a personification of death, and Thanos is in love with her, you know. So he's in love with death. So they take these abstract concepts and they personify them, and so I'm thinking maybe they'll start having these ultimate cosmic personifications show up in some of these movies.
No.
Yeah, they may have like Thanos actually conversing with death, and that would be cool because that's pushing it to where, okay, you know, we're getting the whole Marvel experience in films. You know, they're doing what they did in the comics in the films, so that is, it all ties together, and ultimately they do all this cosmic stuff. It's just so great, you know.
So from a motion picture standpoint or a motion picture series standpoint, do you think when they end up going that big, or if they go that big with these huge cosmic concepts and things, that'll be the end of the Marvel movies because the scope is just so huge that there's nowhere else to go.
It depends on the public. I've already heard people going, "Oh, they've really overdone it. They're like too many of these movies. There's like 6 or 7 a year now." I've heard some people online, critics, saying that they're gonna blow it. They're gonna oversaturate the market, and people are gonna get bored and tired with them. But the way Marvel is doing it, with the subplots going on from movie to movie, if people get hooked on that, I mean, that's how people became comic book collectors. I mean, they had to have the whole story arc, So you bought each issue, from month to month. You couldn't wait till the next one came out. And then you had to have the other comics, the other characters and stuff, because they were tying in and they were crossing over and all this stuff. And if they can pull that off in the movies, where they get people hooked on these, not just the characters but the storylines, it's like, you may not love Hulk, but you're really interested in Hawkeye, and Hawkeye's going to show up in this movie and that movie. You're going to want to keep seeing him, and they have so many characters that you actually see just little bits of their lives in each movie. It's not like they tie up the whole thing in one movie. So if they can pull the public along, with the general public along, the way they did with the comics people, they could go on forever. I mean, Marvel's still publishing comics, even though comics aren't the big draw they used to be, as far as the monthly and bi-monthly comics. They don't sell as well as they did back in the golden age and so forth. But movies, movies are the current pulp magazines. Movies are, they're sort of the throwaway entertainment now. It used to be, you'd buy a comic book and then wrap fish in it. Nobody collected them, and that's the way movies are now. You go and you see one, it's entertaining, you're done. You forget about it, unless you're one of these people who buys all the DVDs and stuff. But why? If you've got cable, these movies seem to be on forever. I can type the search in the search engine. I type in superhero, and I have my choice of a lot of movies. Captain America, Iron Man. You can watch them over and over again. So, I don't know, I'm off on a thing now about collecting. It may be because at this stage in my life, I've got so much stuff. I just realized that, I want to stop buying all this stuff. And
well, that's why we come to you, because you know the history very well.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm kind of glad now, the way things are, that they make these movies and then they are for eternity on TV. I don't have to have DVDs or books or whatever.
Right.
Not that I love books, but don't get me wrong. But you know what I'm saying.
I know what you're saying.
It's just, next time I go to move, it's like, I do not want to have to box all this stuff up.
Oh, cool, man.
So yeah. I hope
that'd be an undertaking.
Yeah, really. I hope the movies go on forever, because then I can see my stories and my characters, on films and in television and stuff like that. I don't have to have all these things. That's why I have all this stuff, is so that I can revisit these characters that I love so much. But if I can do it, in TVs and movies, that simplifies my life. And hopefully the general public will stick with it, so that all the stories get out there on film. That would be my ultimate, goal if I were in charge.
Right on, man. Thanks a lot, Glenn. That was fun.
Yeah, it was. It got me going.